Professor Cummings, and in our last video we had derived the general torsion equation, and I gave you some examples of when to use or how to use this torsion equation, and two different equations that derive from that. One is the shear max equation, max of shear force equation, which involves the torque, the radius of the shaft, as well as the polar moment of inertia, whether it's a hollow shaft or a solid shaft, and then we're also again talking about circular shafts here, as well as the equation for the angle of twist or angular deformation. And this is, and I give you two different examples or different understandings of each one of the shafts. One is like you can use them for material selection to try and understand the failure mode of the material, trying to understand the deformation of the shaft, and also looking at how the superposition of complex shaft designs can be applied to both of these. In this video, what I'm going to do is get you a little more detail on both of those explanations. I just touched on them in the last video, and now I'm going to give you a little bit more to go on. Before we do that, I want to go through an interesting thing when it comes to axial loading, which we've looked at in past videos, and I can put a link, so you can see those videos if you haven't. But also torsional loading. They're very interesting in that they are extremely analogous to one another. They have a lot of things that are in common. The big difference of one being that you're loading it axially, going through the axis of the component, and when you're actually rotating about the axis. So that's torsional loading. But let's go ahead and see what some of the similarities and differences are between these two. So one, they both obviously impart a stress on the material. In axial loading it's called a normal stress, and in torsional loading you treat it as a shear stress. They both also have a strain. In axial loading it is normal strain, that's just the change in length versus the original length, and then you've got a shear length, which has to do with the level of deformation of the material. And then there's elasticity. They both have some way of acknowledging or giving a value to the elasticity. In axial loading, it's Young's modulus. That's the one that everybody remembers. It's the ratio of stress versus strain. So we're talking about the elastic limit of the material. So Hooke's law applies. In torsional loading, that is when we will be concerned with the shear elasticity or shear modulus, which again is the stress over the strain. It's just that, and if you look at the different diagrams, the different charts for both of these, they actually look very similar to one another. There's a little bit of anomalies with the shear stress strain diagram, but they still follow the same pattern. They do have an elastic limit. They actually do go through a yield point. They actually go into a plastic region. They have a strain hardening and then a necking region. And they both have a calculation for deformation. Of course, when it's axial loading, you're looking at linear deformation. So again, you're looking at how much it is actually being either elongated or shortened, compressed. And with at torsional loading, again, you're looking at angle of twist or angular deformation. And even the equations are very similar. In the axial loading, you've got a force, and on torsional loading, you've got a torque. They both involve the length. There's an area component, polar moment of inertia, and then of course you've got the elasticity or how ductile the material is being taken into account. So shear modulus versus the Young's modulus. Now this is back to the general torsion equation. Again, talking about circular shafts, and I told you about the two different ways we could look at this equation. One is if we just get rid of the shear force and the radius, just kind of ignore that component and just set this equation, these two components of the equation, equal to one another. So the torque over the polar moment of inertia and the shear modulus and the angle of twist over the length. As you can see, that's all come into play. And this C is just the radius, and the angle of twist here. The torque is involved, and of course the length of the material. It actually would change depending on how long the shaft is. We do a little bit of arithmetic and we get the angle of twist for a particular shaft. And again, this could be a case of trying to see how much that shaft is going to deform, how efficient your design is going to be. Is there going to be a lot of energy lost in the actual rotating of the material, as well as understanding getting a little bit of better idea as to how much that material is going to deform and potentially be damaged or have a failure mode because of it. Again, the shear modulus is dictated by the material that you select. So again, this is going to become a major equation or player in making that decision. And again, that polar moment of inertia. So this is one way you can decide whether you use a hollow shaft or a solid shaft. Again, that might be an issue of weight, or it might be an issue of just trying to save money on the material. So whether or not you using this equation, you can decide whether or not that hollow shaft in some cost savings is going to give you too much of an angle of twist, actually hurt your efficiency because it won't be able to resist rotation quite as much before you make that decision. Now, more on that angle of twist. Now, there's a video, and again I'll post a link, that I went over what superposition was. And I want to show you how that still applies in torsional loading. So again, here's your angle of twist equation. Again, remember I equated it very similar to the linear deformation. So same rules apply. So if we had a member, you see you've got this member here, this shaft here, and you've got a torque here at point B and a torque at point D, but you've also got a change in diameter, between CD, which is one diameter, and A to B, or A to C, which is another diameter. You also have two different lengths, but you've got we'll assume one common material. So you got two different torques, two different lengths. Those two different diameters means you've got two different polar moment of inertia, but one common material. So to understand how much rotation is going to be between these two from A to D, how much of an angle of twist you're going to end up with, you're going to have to treat both of these as two separate shafts that just happen to be together. Same when we look at this particular application. Here you have a torque, or excuse me, a set of gears on this shaft, this counter shaft. You've got a gear mating system here, and you got a gear mating system there. So you can look at that and say, okay, there's going to be two different torques between these two systems, and potentially different lengths, and you can assume one common material. Again, you're going to have to treat these different shafts as two separate angle of twist if you want to understand how this angle of twist is going to be impacted from one end of the shaft to the other. That brings us back to the rule of superposition. So, and if you don't remember, superposition is the resultant stress or displacement at a point can be determined by algebraically summing the stress or displacement caused by each load component applied separately to the member. So in this case, we're talking about displacement and each load component. So basically, we'd have to add these up. We'd have to find out the angle of twist at each one of these points, or for each one of these members, these load components, and actually add them up algebraically, and that'll give us the angle of twist for the entire rod or the entire shaft. So we get from this simple equation, or this equation of the angle of twist is the torque times the length over the polar moment of inertia and the shear modulus, to the total angle of twist is going to be the sum of each one of the torques times length times polar moment of inertia and shear modulus, treating each one of those as separate. So in the examples we're looking at here is you can have multiple different torques, multiple diameters, as well as multiple materials, which dictates the shear modulus. Now, in this example, or this little, yeah, I guess you call it an example. We've got, another example for the general torsion equation. Let's say we have a motor that's running a generator. The motor is E, the generator is G, and you want to understand what kind of shaft you're going to design. And you also may know the power of that motor, as well as the torque that's going to, or excuse me, the angular velocity, so how fast that motor actually rotates. So these will be things that you actually know right off the bat, and from there you can actually figure out what the torque is going to be. Now let's say you need to decide some information about the shaft, either how much stress you can put on this shaft to help you make a decision on the material, or you need to know how big to design the shaft, or even whether or not to use a solid or a hollow shaft. Well, you can start with your general torsion equation. Just isolate it down to these components and do a little arithmetic, and now you got another equation to help you understand what the shear max you can tolerate based on your calculated torque, which will be based on your power and your velocity. You may use it to find a radius, or you may use it to find whether this would also help you find a radius, of whether it's a hollow or a solid shaft. And again, just to remind you, these are the equations for polar moment of inertia. So these are just, I wanted to go into a little more detail on, the general torsion equation, and then give you some ideas as to why we would actually separate it, why we have these two minor equations, but more just to see that this is a very flexible equation. It's very easily adaptable to a lot of different situations. And just because we use those two particular equations, one based around the shear max shear force and one based around the angle of twist, doesn't mean we can't go about finding those things through any number of algebraic manipulations of this general equation. And also keep in mind that we've only been talking about circular shafts and whether or not they were solid or hollow. So in the next upcoming videos, what I'm going to do is give some examples, examples on finding the hollow, whether or not to use a hollow shaft or not, examples of whether or not how to make a decision on the material, as well as going through things like, what's the maximum torque that can be applied before failure and other things like that. So to give you some sort of application of it, but in this video is just kind of laying the groundwork for that. So go ahead and hit the subscribe if you want to see those future videos, and ring the bell so that you know that it's actually coming up, or that I've actually uploaded them. And in the meantime, thanks for watching, and hope to see you back.